Welcome to the E-Show with Neil Ravin. With over 1,000 NCAA commitments, the EHL is the proven path to college. Turn it up and learn more about the college placement leader at the Division II and III levels.
Welcome into the E-Show once again. My name is Neil Ravin. This is episode number 18, a new Team of the Week feature. And for the first time, we're going to have two coaches on. So from the Valley Junior Warriors, let's start. It's the head coach and GM, Ryan McGrath. Welcome to the E-Show, Ryan.
Thanks for having me, Neil.
And I haven't said your last name on the podcast yet, Andrew. I know you've called me out for that before, but it's Andrew Andricopoulos, the assistant coach. Welcome to the E-Show.
Well, thanks for having me, Neil, and that was very, very well done, sir. Very well done.
I think I've referenced Andrew numerous times in the history of this podcast, but I haven't ever officially said your last name simply for fear of messing it up.
Yeah,
that's why.
Well, that was perfect. So maybe never going forward. We'll leave it out, but that was good. Thank you.
So, Ryan, obviously, as the head coach and GM, you're heading into your second year now. I don't remember the exact date when you got hired this past year, but I think it was kind of around this time. How do you feel about where you're at this year as opposed to a year ago?
Really good. It was a good first year. I mean, we can really, depending on your definition of success, I think we certainly underachieved in the win-loss department, but sitting at 7 NCAA commits currently, we're very proud of that. And it was a great year for Andrew and I to really, sink our teeth into it. And even though I had previously, recruited 15 kids out of this league and watched 45 games in this league scouting, you're only watching players. You're not really watching teams or systems or different things of that nature. So it was a great year to get our feet wet and really establish how we need to operate moving forward to truly be successful. So we're very happy with where we're at. We can sit back after this year and I'm thrilled to have Andrew along with me for this ride. I'm very lucky. I feel he's, if not one of the best assistant coach in our league and all of junior hockey in the East Coast. So I'm very lucky in that respect. And we're sitting in a good spot going into year two. So very enthused about where we're at and where we're headed.
And around this time last year, as I said, you became the head coach of the program and the GM after a number of years at the Division III level. What was it about coming back to the EHL? Because you had some or junior experience, I should say, prior to the league taking on the EHL name. What was it about the league that said, all right, now is the time I want to go back into juniors?
I was in a great position at Wentworth, and I wasn't looking to leave. Jay Pecora and myself were building something special, and I live in Boston, and obviously the school's in downtown Boston. But when Andy Hines announced his retirement, and he had reached out to me to, interview for his position, I always knew that the Valley brand was one that really, showcased strength. It's a very strong brand. They own 4 buildings with 6 sheets of ice, the largest youth hockey league in the United States. And it's a family-owned business. And Andrew and I are very fortunate to work for Paul and John Gilmartin. And, there weren't many junior jobs I would have interviewed for, but this is one that I certainly jumped at the opportunity because it's a great location. It's a great facility, great ownership group, very strong youth program, and just, the ability to offer players, almost unlimited amount of ice, access to strength and conditioning, and just a huge amount of resources made it a very attractive one for me.
And in talking with your ownership, one thing that kind of set you apart at the time was the fact that you came in and said, here's the staff that I'm going to be bringing with me. It wasn't just all about yourself. Here's the staff. And Andrew, the question's for you now. When Ryan called you up and said, I want you to be my assistant coach, can you kind of just take us through that process? What went through your head?
Yeah, sure. So I had been coaching the previous 2 seasons at Brooks Prep School, and it was a great introduction to hockey at the higher level for myself. I'd done numbers of years with split season teams, and At that point in my career, coaching career, I was comfortable enough to maybe potentially look for, a head coaching job somewhere else. And when I found out that Ryan was hired, I went through his background and I saw that it was impressive. 20 years experience being a top-notch recruiter. I knew for myself it was going to be a great opportunity, to kind of learn and study under a guy like him, because it's only going to benefit me. It's going to be advantageous for me, help me in my career. So when I used to walk around the hallways and see guys coming in for interviews, and when I saw Ryan and he ended up getting the job, I was kind of praying truthfully that he would offer me the role, come into my office, introduce himself and say, I'd love to have you on board. And he did just that. We had a great conversation for 5 or 10 minutes, I think right after he was hired, and we just had this rapport immediately, I thought. And, I was very happy. I liked, our goals and aspirations, I think are really much aligned, and it helps us work really, really well together. So I was very excited when he offered me his assistant role. It was great for me, and definitely, again, like I said, advantageous for my career.
And as I mentioned in the introduction to this episode, this is the 4th Team of the Week feature, but the first time I haven't had just the head coach on. So I wanted to have you both on. I know, Andrew, you had talked about coming on the podcast for a while here, but you're not only
have I been bothering you, Neil?
No, never. You've never bothered me. We've had many great laughs throughout this past season. But My question really now is, you aren't just the assistant coach of the junior team there. You do a lot of other things. Can you kind of take us through what other hats you wear?
Yeah, sure. There's a multitude of tasks that are going on. So, I would say 50% of my role is junior hockey, and I help Ryan, every day on the ice. Ryan does most of the recruiting, and he's very good at that. But I'm on the ice every day, of course. Some of my other responsibilities are running I'm the director of player development, or director of hockey operations for a really large youth all-star program. So we have our Valley Hockey League, and it's the best of those players that make up about 20 teams in this league. It's a supplemental league to the Valley Hockey League. So I do everything from marketing, running websites, to finding coaches, and I'm the skills director for that league. I also run the skills for our Valley Warrior Youth program, and I run our tryouts and help with our Boston Americans program. I help to run our E9 Prep Showcase League, which is, the premier split season midget league program, or midget league in the country. I believe there's I think last year at the U18 level, we had 3 or 4 of the top 25 teams in the country in the league that I helped to run. So I'm proud of that. I'm proud of the youth hockey league that I've been running. It's cliche, but there really is no, set day. So, coaching junior has been a very, very, very welcome addition to what I'm doing with Valley.
One of the many things that you're doing.
Yeah, one of the many things. I forgot a few, but we don't need to get into it.
Well, let's go back to this past year some more. Ryan, you briefly touched on this before, 7 NCAA commitments, but it's also 7 different schools and 5 different conferences. Do you put extra stock into that and the variety?
The biggest thing that sticks out to me is they're all good schools. Really, when you go into it if you're trying to push kids to a certain school or a certain league, you run into problems. I think the best way to handle it is to take each player on a case-by-case basis and figure out what his academic needs are, what his financial boundaries are, how far away or close to home he wants to be, what kind of campus he wants, whether it's a suburban campus or a city campus, what major he wants to study, the political climate of the campus. There's so many different criteria that go into making a college selection that we go into it every year starting from scratch. And maybe next year we end up with 10 kids that go to state schools. And we won't be any less proud of those kids than we are of these kids, right? Because they're making the best decision for their future, both as hockey players and more importantly as students. So, we're psyched about these 7. And there's, we have 7 NCAA commits, but we have a number of other players in our program that are just making academic decisions. And we're just as proud of them to make those mature decisions to chase that academic experience. So really, No, we don't prefer one league over another. We don't push one league over another. Every player every year is different. So, we'll see what next year brings.
Do you credit this variety to the network that you kind of built when you were an assistant coach at the D3 level?
Yes. I mean, most people who know me know that I'm a pretty humble guy. I wasn't a very good hockey player. And I have no idea if I'm a good coach or not, but what I can tell people without a doubt is there isn't a Division III staff in the country that I don't know at least one person on, or I can't get a cell phone number and make a phone call. And more importantly is those guys all know that I spent 9 years in their seats. So when I put my stamp of approval on a kid, it means something because I know what it's like to be on their end and receive these players from junior coaches, from prep coaches. So, we're pretty lucky that, there's 84 schools, soon to be 85, that offer NCAA Division III hockey across the country. The majority of them are in New England. And then there's 7 that offer Division II hockey, and they're all in New England. And, between Andrew and myself, like we talked about, there's really not a staff that we don't have a direct connection to, which is fantastic.
And Andrew, not to highlight, one player above the rest, but of those 7 NCAA commitments, is there a player that made a tremendous progression as the year went on? Is there one commitment that maybe even Ryan would agree that you can look back on and say, you know what, we're proud of that one for sure?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I think you jumped. I'm proud of all of the guys. I think they all they're going to bring a multitude of different positive characteristics to wherever they end up in the fall. But I think Jack Dudley, obviously with an SCAT commitment, but I think he made huge strides as a player. I know where he was last year, relative to where he is this season. And he was a leader in the locker room. He was a leader on the ice. He brought it. I will say, for this level of junior hockey, any level of hockey, doesn't matter. His consistency throughout the entire year, I thought was extremely impressive. I like Ryan had said, one of my responsibilities was our power play, and I basically ran everything through him, and it was a lot to ask. But he was up for the task every single game, 46 games, whatever we play. But he was up for it every single night, never complained. And I asked a lot of him. I know Ryan asked a lot of him. So I was very impressed with the way his behavior on and off the ice this year.
And obviously he was an EHL All-Star as well. One of the most physical players I think we had in the league this past season. Sent a message every time that he was on the ice. Is there another commit? I'll let either of you take this. Is there another commit that maybe you call that player underrated? I know that's kind of a tough label, but when that kid gets to college, that name is going to become bigger.
Yeah, Andrew, I'll take this one. I think Rylan Duke's, really for us committing to Wentworth Institute of Technology, obviously a place that I worked at for 5 years, but he's a guy that pretty much lost his entire 18-year-old year to injury. Came into our season with not very many options, and really made up almost 2 years of development inside of one hockey season, and got to the point where he had multiple schools offering him not only spots on the team, but very specific roles in a top one. School in the NEHC offered him a first line left wing. Another school in the NE10 offered him a top 2 line spot. Things that I have never even done as a coach, because they wanted him that badly. So he's a kid that came in with almost zero options, and by the end of the year had multiple schools almost begging for him to come. So he's a kid that really came a tremendous way from September to March.
Is there another one that you want to highlight, Andrew? I would say, just piggybacking off of what Ryan said, I was extremely impressed with Ryan his whole season as well. I thought his hockey IQ, his hockey sense is maybe top 5 in the league. Just what he brought every single night, even in practice. Another kid that showcased his leadership capabilities all year. And not to be biased, but even Patrick Rossetti, defenseman, I got to work with him all year, and he had his ups and downs, but I think he's going to bring a lot to Assumption. And again, whenever we needed him, he was there. He answered the call. So again, I was proud of him. I'm proud of all 7 guys that have committed, and maybe a few more that will end up committing. So again, we were lucky to work with some great players this year.
And now looking ahead to next season, obviously those 7 guys are gone. A number of other age outs, as Ryan mentioned, that have chosen academic futures. When you're bringing in the next group of guys, I'll let Andrew start with this one. Are you going to reference some of the successes that the previous players had, or let those future players kind of write their own story?
Well, I think you can't forget about the past, right? I think it's a testament to what Ryan has done mostly, and I help as much as possible. But I think we have to. I don't want to depend on the success of the past, but I think it's it's a great thing. I mean, that's the whole purpose of recruiting. You look at the top levels of college, BU, BC. Why do they get the best players? Well, they have a track record of success. So I think Ryan's done a fantastic job, kind of building the culture that we want. And we'll leave it at that, and then. The conversations and the relationships that I will build with these kids will reference that, but it's your turn, and we've kind of set up the avenue or the path to success, but you've got to take advantage of what we're giving you, the ice time that you're going to get, and it's on you to kind of determine the success that you're going to have for the current season, but also the future. So, proud of what we've done, and I'm going to be extremely proud of what we continue to do going forward.
And one thing that's consistent, Ryan, in 4th week in a row with this Team of the Week feature is that each program that I've featured so far or highlighted has kind of basically said that they have to hit almost a full reset button, whether it's double-digit NCAA commitments, you're nearing that yourself, a number of players moving on. Does that make the job harder for you to not have returners, or is it almost easier just to kind of wipe one slate clean and start over again?
I think there's a couple different schools of thought. Ideally, you'd probably like to have a mixture. You'd like to have some veterans, help you out. But if I don't think Chris Sorella would complain. He almost needs a brand new team every year, and it hasn't seemed to slow him down. And he's the class of the league right now. So we're all chasing Chris, rightfully so. He deserves it. So, we're going to have less than a handful of kids coming back. So we're pretty much going to be a brand new team. And the good part is you've got a lot of kids that are excited. You've got a lot of kids that are new. Maybe they didn't get their heart broken. Maybe they didn't, maybe kids that end up coming back are, for whatever reason, disenchanted or whatnot, but there's a reason they're not going to college. So, if we got to bring in almost a brand new team every year, great. And that's not a problem. There's more good kids available than there are spots in our league. My phone's been ringing off the hook. Andrew's phone's been ringing off the hook. Our email, our location, our ability to help players is prevalent. And so I think every year is going to be different, but the fact that we're going to have almost 20 new players next year, I'm excited about that. And a year from now, maybe I'll answer differently.
And along with the new players, you're going to have a new EHLP head coach as well in Brett Heigl. Not many people in the EHL or the EHLP know who he is quite yet, but can you tell us some more about Brett and why you're excited to add him to your program?
Really excited to add Brett. I met him a year ago at the Elite Edge Showcase in Nashville, and he was one of the only guys wearing a shirt and tie while recruiting. He was working at the Hoosac Prep School out in New York, which is a New England prep school, but plays there in Hoosac Falls, New York, and came up, introduced himself to me. He's actually a Valley Warrior alum. And so we developed a friendship, and, he really did a great job recruiting there and developing some pretty good players over the last 4 years in the middle of nowhere, right? In a very hard place to recruit to, a very expensive place to recruit to. And he wanted to get back home. He's from this area. His parents are in this area. And, he knew Andrew as well. And he'd kind of reached out to both of us separately during the season and said, if there was ever any opportunities to come along, we'd love to have the conversation. So we're psyched to have him. And the reason I brought Andrew on this is to really showcase that we are a team. We're a family of coaches as well as a family of players. And Brett's going to step right in there. And, now we've got, 3 full-time junior coaches, plus we've got, numerous split season midget coaches and our youth coaches. And, it's a great environment for us to bounce ideas off of one another and utilize each other for different resources or, different drills or, expanding our network. So we are psyched to bring Brett along. He's going to bring so much energy and passion to our program.
And you kind of have to always respect the guy that has a shirt and tie on in the middle of the summer in Nashville. I know you're in the rink, but still, it's warm.
He looked great too.
So let's step back now, Andrew, to your playing career.
Yep.
However far back you want to go, can you walk us through, your journey that ultimately led you all the way here to the Valley Junior Warriors?
Ryan, how much time are you giving me for this?
I was just going to say, Neil, did you get the expanded Zoom account? This could be a while.
Neil, you got the thumb drive that I sent over last night, right?
Yes.
No, really quickly, just Tabor Academy prep school for 2 years. I was recruited by Patrick Waugh to go to the Quebec Midget Junior Hockey League. I was planning on going to BU or BC. I went up in 2003, I think it was. There was a Memorial Cup championship. So my first exposure to the Q was the Memorial Cup with 15,000 people in the stands. So working with my agent or family advisor at the time, whatever you want to call it, we just thought it was best to go there. So I ended up playing 4 years in the Q. In 2006, I was lucky enough to win a Memorial Cup championship and play with some pretty good NHL guys that are still playing in the league today. And, I did my NHL camps and American League camps, and it didn't work out, of course, as I wish that it had. But it was great experiences. After my Q career, I played in a couple of exhibition games in the American League and played 1.5 years in the East Coast Hockey League with the Washington Capitals and the San Jose Sharks organizations. And after that, I was getting traded a bit. So I knew it was time to get a degree. I ended up I left minor pro and went back to school and played Division I hockey in Canada, because a lot of kids listening to this might not know, but you do lose your eligibility for NCAA in the United States. So I ended up playing 4 years in Fredericton, New Brunswick at a Division I program under the coaching of Mike Eagles, former NHL player. You YouTube him because you'll really like what you find. He was a fourth line grinder his whole career, but great guy, great player. I learned a lot from him. I think that's where I really started maybe finding out that I wanted to be a coach. And that was it. So I did my 4 years, graduated, and then here I am now.
Well,
was that long enough, or do you?
It was perfect. Let's pump your tire. Let's pump your tires a little bit more. Let's hear a few of those names that you did get a chance to play with, NHL guys.
Yeah, sure. So Marc-Edouard Vlasic with the San Jose Sharks. I mean, probably one of the best defensemen in the league. Not a ton of people know him, but they really should. So we're still buddies now. When he was in Boston, we'd go to dinner. I haven't seen him in about a year or two now, but maybe I'll bother him when they're back in town next year. But great guy, great player, of course. And then the other one everybody probably knows is a huge personality is Alexander Radulov with Dallas now. He's the stories we have together. He was a great guy. We've kind of fallen out of touch. When he left the NHL years ago to go to the KHL, unfortunately, it was really hard for us to stay in touch with one another. But great memories of him. Great guy, a little crazy, but and obviously a fantastic hockey player. I mean, one of the best that I've ever played with. So, of course, right?
All right. Well, let's go back to Ryan in a second. Obviously, with kind of jumping around like that, different leagues, different levels, you entered into a lot of different rinks. Is there one that you'll always remember and like, man, I loved playing in that barn?
Me, Neil?
Yes.
I would have to say probably a team in the queue is Chicoutimi that I can't even pronounce. Chicoutimi Saguin or whatever it was called. Probably about 4,000 seat arena, packed every single night. If you do some history there, Teddy Nolan was a victim of something that happened up there, but I think that obviously wasn't right, but that's just the type of adversity and the crowd that you had faced, people just screaming and yelling. And It was the only time in my career, obviously at that level, but even through youth, where I think there was about a minute left in the third period. Police came on the ice and just said, "No, we're not going. We're not going to play anymore." I mean, there's a minute left in the third, but I mean, to end early a Quebec Major Junior Hockey League game, you could probably figure out what was going in the crowds, and police escorts out the back into the bus, and literally 90-year-old women screaming and yelling at you in French. That is a memory that I will always carry with me. But it was a ton of fun, man, playing in that barn. It was definitely an experience that I'll carry with me for the rest of my life.
Well, I'm sorry that our fans are just as rowdy.
No, we've got great fans in this place, and I'm looking to increase the volume next season. So.
All right, so Ryan, Andrew took us through his playing career up until this point. Can you take us through your coaching career up until this point?
Oh boy, it's been a long time. I know I don't look that old, but well, I'll start with the 5 years prior to taking this job. I was the assistant coach and the recruiting coordinator at Wentworth Institute of Technology. Jay Pecora, who's the head coach there and a very close personal friend of mine. We'd worked together previously. He's just a heck of a mentor and a guy that truly runs that team like a family, and it was just a wonderful experience to help build something with him, and they were fortunate enough to make it all the way to the championship game of the CCC this year. They were one win away from going to the NCAA tournament. They lost to Endicott in the championship game, and then for 1 year prior to that, I worked in a non-USA Hockey registered junior league. I don't know if they were registered at the time, but it was the South Shore Kings in the USPHL. It was the first year of the USPHL. It was okay. I didn't love my experience there, so I didn't stay too long. I jumped when Jay got the job at Wentworth, but it was good to work with a guy like Scotty Harlow and another guy by the name of John Gerskis, who are both, really good coaches, and Brian McDonough and the staff at EPS were excellent to work with. And for 4 years prior to that, I got to cut my teeth in college hockey with UMass Boston, and really special place. I literally walk out my front door and I can see UMass Boston every day. I drive by it twice a day. Peter Belisle is one of the best guys in all of hockey. Comes from a storied hockey family in Pawtucket, Rhode Island, or Cumberland, Rhode Island, and the Mount St. Charles. His dad, Bill Belisle, and brother Dave. And Peter gave me an opportunity to recruit and get involved in every aspect of his program, and it was great. And I was part of a staff that recruited 7 All-Americans between Peter, myself, Greg Schwind, who's now coaching high school hockey in the Rochester, New York area, as well as Sean Walsh, who's now the head coach at Southern New Hampshire University in the New England and the NE10 conference. We had a blast, and we won a lot of games and really helped put that program on the map. And now they get to reload every year. So very proud of my time there. For 3 years prior to that, I got to work with the Portland Junior Pirates back in the old Atlantic Junior Hockey League. And that's where I originally met Jay Pecora. I was the associate head coach for their Atlantic Junior League team for 2 years. Then I was their head coach of their Metropolitan Junior B League team for 1 year. And in my time there, I think we moved 40 kids onto college hockey. NCAA Division I, Division III. We moved kids to the Quebec Major Junior League, to some of the pro leagues in Europe, and really just, it had a blast. I loved how Jay ran the program there. It was all about, the development of the players, and it really shaped how I wanted to kind of move forward. And it really allowed me to get the job at UMass Boston because, I was always in a rink. I was either, scouting midget kids or prep school kids or high school kids, and coaching the junior kids. And it introduced me to all the Division III and Division I coaches, which allowed me to get the job at UMass Boston. Before that, I spent a couple of years with they were then called the Northern Cyclones out of Dracut, Massachusetts, that were in the Atlantic Junior League and the Met Junior B League. And then coached high school hockey at my alma mater, Reading High School, for the Dohertys, and then did 1 year at North Reading High School, where I was the head coach of their junior varsity team. We did morning practices at 4:30 a.m. at the Brooks School and Merrimack College, driving to practice when it was still dark out. And then, also in that time, I had the ability I was the director of player development for Mass Hockey. I was in charge of identifying all the players in Mass that were going to be moved on to the national camp. That was a very important position, and I loved it for 4 years and really enjoyed it, and got to work in different, the Rocky Mountain District camp. I did Rhode Island, Maine, Florida, Massachusetts, New England district. So really did a bunch of different camps in the spring and summer months to help kids throughout the country. So that was a lot of fun, and helped expand my network. And then I did 4 years while I was at UMass Boston. I was also running the Rhode Island Saints midget program. So they were split season midgets. So I did the 16s and the 18s, and our 16 team back in the 95s and 96s were U16, ended up winning the New England Championship and going on to the USA Hockey Tier 1 Nationals, where we lost to the eventual national champion Long Island Royals. And that game was actually featured on the NHL Network. Pat LaFontaine was the coach of the Royals. They were on the NHL Network that whole year. I tried like heck to get on TV. It didn't happen. But, thank God Neil came along with the Eastern Hockey League podcast. So that's that's how we got in. So really been able to spend almost a lifetime of hockey at different levels: midget AAA, high school, college, and junior. And it's I don't regret 1 minute of it. I don't feel like I have a job because I love what I do, and I show up to work every day with a smile on my face, jacked up to help players, and it's a lot of fun.
Well, maybe this is harder than for you. Can you identify one rink where whenever you have to go back there, maybe you always get excited?
I got to tell you, the Biddeford Ice Arena right now is no longer, I don't think any teams are playing out of there. But when I was a player in the old Eastern Junior League, they had a team there called the Great Northern Snow Devils. And if you were lucky to play there on Friday nights, they would let all the local high school kids in for free. And it was an absolute madhouse. We got spit on, we got things thrown at us, an absolute just pandemonium. If you went up there on a Friday night, and fighting was allowed back then. So that's a rink that just gives me great memories. And I was able to work in that rink for 2 years with the Junior Pirates. But the other rink I will mention, and also no longer in the league, is and I don't know the name of the rink, but it's in Binghamton, New York, and a team was called the Binghamton Junior Senators. But if they didn't have an American League game, the junior team got packed, and they had, I think it was 1,500 fans, and they did 17-minute intermissions, and they sold $3 pitchers of beer during intermission.
Wow!
With zero security. There was 1 year, my first year in Portland, we had Mark Antoine, who ended up being a full scholarship guy at the University of Maine. Yep. He was the best rookie in the league. He gets hit from behind right in front of our bench. Binghamton's bench empties, a brawl ensues, and at the end of the game, they shut the lights off in our locker room. They shut the water off, and there was about 400 fans in the lobby waiting for us. We had to sneak out the back door out to our bus to get out safely. So that's a rink I'd love to go back to someday. Well, there were some good memories there.
You each have some pretty hostile stories to tell. So I'm glad that we haven't had a situation like that for you guys in the EHL, knock on wood. But I appreciate you each telling us these stories. I mean, the one thing I will say about Biddeford Ice Arena, Ryan, not great memories for myself there. I did break my wrist there when I was younger, so I don't want to go back there ever again. But that's just me personally. But the final question I have for you before I wrap things up with Andrew as well, I'm going to do what I kind of did with Cody and ask you to put together almost an all-time lineup of guys that you've coached. If you want to include, 2 from Wentworth, 2 from UMass Boston, and 1 from the Warriors, have at it however you want. But let's hear some of the names of players that you've coached over the years.
Sure. Well, you always have to start in net, your most important position. I think the best goalie I ever coached was an '89 out of Maine, Nick Broadwater. I coached him with the Junior Pirates. He ended up being a 2-time All-American at Hobart. Brodsy was just a phenomenal athlete and an even better person. On D, I'm gonna look back to one defenseman from UMass Boston, a kid out of West Roxbury, Rob Florentino, All-American at UMass Boston. Just a player that ran the power play for us, and he played for Scotty Harlow and the South Shore Kings. He played for Bill Hansen at Catholic Memorial. He had older brothers and a very, very demanding father. There was nothing we could say to him that fazed him. Peter Belial and I could scream at him. It did not matter. It rolled right off of him. He would just smile and go out and score a power play goal. The other defenseman I would say is a kid from the Rhode Island Saints, Zach Jatari. Was one. He played at LaSalle Academy in Rhode Island. We helped Zach get to the Loomis Chaffee School. He ended up matriculating after a year in the BCHL to Brown University, where he just was their captain, was a two-sport athlete there, also played lacrosse, and just signed an American League deal with the Hartford Wolfpack. And one of my best friends in the world, Brendan Clark, who scouts for the New York Rangers, helped facilitate that deal. Up front, I'm going to go back to Reading High School. The best player I ever coached there, Sean Collins, All-American at UNH, still a friend to this day. Sean, I was a senior when he was a freshman, and his first period of his first game as a freshman in high school at 14 years old had a natural hat trick. Had almost 300 points at Reading High School, 200 points at UNH, so pretty good. And then I'm going to throw Jack Dudley there in the center position. Obviously, I think our top player here at the Warriors. And then the right wing position, I'm torn. I've got from Wentworth, I would go Steve McManus. He ended up being a captain for us. He's a Westwood kid. He played a year at Salem State and really helped Jay and I bridge the gap between the players that we recruited and the former coaching staff. And Steve was just an unbelievable kid, young man who still supports the program. And then the other player would be probably one of the best players I recruited at UMass Boston. It was a right wing out of the New Jersey Rockets, also in the Atlantic Junior League, Travis Daniel. The coach at the time of the New Jersey Rockets really didn't want Peter and I to recruit him. And after a game in Hudson, New Hampshire, really didn't want us to talk to the kid because they were hoping he was going to go to Sacred Heart. So the coach walked away, and Peter and I walked right into the locker room at Hudson, New Hampshire, and had to literally drag the kid out and just said, if Division I doesn't work out, give us a call. And you know what? It didn't work out for the kid, and he ended up being a 100-point scorer at UMass Boston. He's now he's a police officer in New Jersey, and probably one of the best all-time roller hockey players in the history of New Jersey roller hockey, and just an absolute stud of a right wing. So pretty eclectic group from all over, but and I could go on and on. There's a dozen other players that could have made that list, but those are the guys I'm going to stick to right now.
Well, I'll figure out a way to get your lineup up against Cody's lineup because those are both legit groups. So
his was pretty good. I listened to his this morning.
So now to wrap things up, we'll bring Andrew back in here too. Back to the EHL, back to this upcoming 2020-21 season. I know Andrew said that Ryan does more of the recruiting than he does, but you're both coming off your first year back in the league. You obviously not the year that you wanted it to be from a record perspective, but a good foundation for the years to come. As you're getting this year's team ready to go, are there players that you came across last year, not from your own team, but from other teams, that you said to yourself, I'd love to have a kid like that on my team in the future?
Ryan, do you want me to go first, or?
I want you to take that, Andrew.
Well, I mean, so yeah, the first introduction, I will say too, I was so impressed with the EHL in terms of a quality league. There's so many good players, but obviously the guys that stood out to me were, from Vermont, you had Logan Toscano, right? I think he had 91 points this year. It's kind of hard. I mean, it's kind of hard not to mention him. I think it was our last weekend of the season we had played them, and we had a couple of tough games. But it's just a testament to how well they were coached. And I really didn't see a team all year control the play like they did. So I'd have to go with Logan Toscano. Our rival, I think, right down the road is the Wizards. There was a kid, Chance Gorman. I like the way he played. I don't think he's the biggest guy, but he's very creative with the puck. I think he had about 66 points this year. So there's another kid that obviously can put the puck in the net and create some offensive chances. And then the Wolves. I have to throw a guy from the Wolves because we did have their number this season. I thought it was we always had battles, but we came out on top most of the time. There was a kid. I'll probably butcher his name, but it was DJ Schwenke, I believe.
That's it. Yeah.
Yeah. So he's a big kid. I think he's like 6'1", 6'2", 200 pounds. I like the way he plays. I think he had about 51 points this year. So, those are the guys that stood out. And there's a couple others, but those are the three that made an impression on me. I'm sure, they're going to have bright futures.
Any guys for you, Ryan?
I think that's a good answer. I'm gonna let Andrew finish that answer.
Okay.
That was good. There's, you know what, there were so many players across the league that did a great job. I think on any roster there were kids that we would love to have had, and hopefully some of the other coaches would love to have some of the kids on our roster. And it's a testament to show you how hard the coaches in our league work to not only identify players and recruit them, but develop them. And that's always been the case with this league. And, there are kids that you look at in September and you're like, oh, okay. And then you see them again in February and March, and they've gone from they were boys when they entered the league, and they're men when they leave the league. And, there's really too many to count. Those are some great responses by Andrew. But there was a handful of kids on Bill Zanaboni's team that I would love to have had. And there was a couple of kids on Brett Trider's team, the Seacoast Spartans, that just killed us every time we played them. They worked so hard, and Jimmy Mosso up in Vermont's doing a great job. And he had two lines of kids that were just awesome, and then even his role players were awesome. So and we could go down. We could spend all day and go through every roster and talk about all the good players that there were. And we see it because those kids. How many players of the week or of the month do we have this year in the NCAA? In different conferences. I mean, it was like December or January. It was like every week we were getting multiple players of the week and players of the month.
And I think what you just said there was really well put, is that you'd love to have all these guys on your team, but what I respect about our coaches the most is that they can recognize talent, whether it's on their team or not. And that's why I've asked this question 4 weeks in a row now, because they see you guys, other coaches, see players throughout the league, and you identify them for who they are, and then you try and go get your own guys in the years to come. So I really appreciate you guys coming on the podcast. Obviously, we're in a little bit of a weird time right now, but check off another Team of the Week feature. The Valley Junior Warriors, they kind of hit the reset button a little bit last year when you guys each got your first year under your belt, but the foundation's been laid, and bringing in Brett Heigl now, the future's bright for both the EHL and EHLP teams. So good luck with the rest of the recruiting. Stay safe in these crazy times, and let's talk soon.
All right, Neil. Thank you very much for having us, man.
Thank you, Neil. We appreciate all that you do.
Thanks for listening to The E-Show. Learn more at easternhockeyleague.org and follow us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube. Also, be sure to subscribe and get notified when next week's podcast is released.